this is a haul video, which I don't usually film, but my last video was a travel vlog and I did buy a lot of books while I was away, so these are the books. I believe this is the first book I picked up, I think at the Glencoe Visitor Centre. It is Scottish Plant Lore and Illustrated Flora. This is by Gregory J. Kenneser, and I really like plants and I've been trying to get into gardening. But I also, if you've been here a while, know that I did take like a herbalism apprenticeship at one point and had to give it up, and it's haunted me ever since. But this is really interesting because it details different environments where different plants grow, wetlands, moorlands for example, and the art is really, really lovely. I also really appreciate that there are 3 indexes, first for the scientific names of plants, second for the English, and third for Gaelic. The second book that I got was Embroidering Her Truth, Mary Queen of Scots in the Language of Power by Claire Hunter. Now, this is fascinating to me because I do love textiles, I do love textile history, but also because I don't actually know that much about Mary Queen of Scots. It mentions specifically in the blurb that she wore red to her execution, and while it is seen as like a colour representing passion and power, she wore it to kind of link herself to Catholic martyrdom, which I thought was really interesting. Also, I'm not sure how well this shows up on camera, but the little embroidery patterns are actually raised off of the what do you call the paper that's on hardback. I just thought that was a really nice touch. And then we went to one of my most anticipated places, which was Wikis Bookshop in Inverness, and it was fantastic. I was really excited about it, and also I do believe I have to issue an apology for taking up an entire section. I didn't realise how high the upstairs was, and I got up there and immediately panicked. And so I ended up kind of sitting down and blocking people's way for a time. I don't think many people wanted to go up that way, and certainly no one asked to pass me by, but yes, I'm sorry about that. One of the first books that I picked up was Poems and Ballads of Scottish History. This was published in 1926. It is so old and lovely, and it's gorgeous. I can't wait to read it. And then also this one, which is from 1929, I believe. It is a little bit worse for wear. There is some sellotape on the front, and the cover is a wee bit limp, shall we say. This is Milton's Poetical Works, the Globe edition, and it says Macmillan and Co. I have been meaning to read Paradise Lost for a while, and so that's why I picked this one up. And about then is when I took myself upstairs to make a mischief of myself. This book I was really excited about. Passed over and then couldn't find for like 15 minutes. But I'm really excited about it. It is The Sculpture of Classical Greece, and at the bottom it reads The Acanthus History of Sculpture. Now, this covers the Parthenon statues, otherwise known as the Elgin Marbles. A bit of contentious recent history. This was published in 1960, but I do think it's just a catalogue of the statues. And I am interested because this, I believe they were created in Periclean Greece, which is considered a golden age. So I've been focusing quite a bit of study on that area. Another book that I found and then had to go and look for again is Chinese Portraiture by Eli Lankman. It mentions like Bronze Age in its opening, and goes all the way to the Qing Dynasty, which is really fascinating. It's a long period of history to be talking about, a lot of changes, and I don't know if it's quite thick enough for that, but it's not a subject, art, that I know a lot about, especially not Chinese art. So at the very least, I think it would be a good place to begin, possibly. Also, there is a list of other books on the back, and I do always love that. Then we have The Art of Ancient Egypt by Gay Robbins. I don't know when this was published. I do know a little bit about ancient Egyptian art. Long period of time, I know, but I do know a little bit that they depict the whole. So, for instance, a woman in a dress, you'll still see her nipples. The weird perspective sometimes with the hands, but it will show all 5 fingers. Yeah, so I'm not quite a beginner here, but again, it's a long period of time and not the thickest of books. So yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with this, but also I'm still a bit of a beginner. So hopefully it's not too high level. And then there was also Gold of the Pharaohs, which is from 1988, and I thought it said it was the catalogue for an exhibit, which is, I like those well enough, but it turns out it's a lot more text heavy than I would have expected. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how this is going to go, but really interested to figure out what this is. And then this is an auction book from Sotheby's, Japanese works of art, painting, swords and sword fittings, from the 20th of June 1989, which, to be honest, I kind of expected the text in the Egyptian book to be a little bit more like this, where it just gives you like minor details about the items, the dates, for instance. So yeah, it's not a broad scope, but it is also a very interesting kind of snapshot of the art of different eras. So we're going to hope that the battery lasts this time. This was from the British Museum Press. It is a dictionary of the ancient Near East, edited by Piotr Bienkowski and Alan Millard. I think this is from 2000, which makes it one of the more recent ones. And it is basically what it says on the tin. It's a dictionary. Interesting thing, once I got it, I did read that it says it has 350 black and white illustrations, which I think is interesting because I haven't seen any flicking through. I have seen lots of black and white pictures of artifacts, that's the word, of artifacts, but no illustrations. It might just be a wee oops. But it's an interesting one. Then from the Folio Society we have this one, Regency England, The Great Age of the Colour Print by, I think, Ray Tannehill, but I don't know how to pronounce that. This was from 1964. It is again a book about art history. The Regency era is another one that I'm particularly focused on right now. I'm unfortunately going to have to let my membership with the Regency Fiction Writers lapse in November, but it has been like a focal point for me of late, and so I'll be able to continue looking stuff up without it. These are some of the illustrations, by the way, in case you were wondering. I got another book from the Folio Society as well. This is The Monk by Matthew Lewis. It is kind of ugly, but you know, it is a text that keeps coming back up in Romancing the Gothic, and so I'm like 2 years behind in not having read it. It is an early Gothic, I think from the 18th century. I'm pretty sure from the 18th century, and yeah, it's one that keeps coming back up. So this was printed in 1984. I'm sorry, it's so distracting. the Gothic is known for its transgressions, and the monk in particular has a very interesting interplay with gender, but it is also I believe quite rapey. There are a few talks and stuff on Romancing the Gothic if you're interested in that. And apparently this has some nice wood engraving art throughout the book, which I didn't realise until literally just now. But yeah. So to round off Leakies, I got 2 books. Inkheart by Cornelia Funk, which is delightful. I'm not sure if the copy I read in primary 4 had soon to be a major motion picture on it, but it's giving me so much nostalgia. The cover. This is about Maggie, who loves books, and her dad, who is a bookbinder, who also loves books, but who hasn't read to her aloud since the night her mother disappeared. And it's all quiet until this stranger comes, and you find out why he has never read aloud to her again. It's a really good book, and I absolutely adored it at the time. I also got Unheard Voices, collected by Mallory Blackman. This is a collection of stories, poems, and first-hand recollections on the theme of slavery. So you have texts from Benjamin Zephaniah, and yeah, there's also an original story and a foreword from Blackman herself. There really was not much in the bookstore that was fiction. I will say that for Leakies. I do think this one was in the fiction section, and I don't know how appropriate that necessarily is. Although it definitely looks like a fiction book from the cover. But yeah, there is a selection. It's not the best, is all I would say to bear in mind about Leakies. This book I got from the Highland Wildlife Park, which I highly recommend you go to. They have this Wolfwood section, and it was amazing. There was also a red panda. The first time we went, there were 4, 2 adults and 2 cubs, and this time there's only 1. But they are gorgeous and highly worth the visit. The book is Reworld Yourself, 23 Spellbinding Ways to Make Nature More Visible, and this is by Simon Barnes. The Highland Wildlife Park is a charity, so it's good to get some money to them through that. This is basically about the ways that we have stopped paying attention to the world that we live in, to nature, and starting to kind of tune in back to it. I spent so much of the trip so excited to finally get back to armchair books. It's been years, but I'm going to be honest, Leaky's kind of spoiled me. Armchair books is much better for fiction, but I was kind of more in the non-fiction headspace when I went in. But I got some really good... Sorry. So much talking. I got some really good ones. This is The Haunting of Hiram, I think, by Eva Ibbotson, and I think I read this one in primary 3. It was one of just the books outside the class that you have for, to just pick up and peruse. And yeah, I've read this one before, and it's been so long. I saw the name and I was immediately like, oh, you. So this is about a castle that has been in Alex's family for hundreds of years, and he needs to sell it. But there are ghosts in the castle, and he doesn't want them to be booted out when the castle goes to someone else. It's a really fun, it was really fun at the time, and I hope it really does stand up to a reread. I will be vlogging this at some point, maybe next year. And also I got The Girl Who Soared Over Fairyland and Cut the Moon in Two by Kathleen M. Valenti. I started the first book in the series, and my god, Catherine Valenti, her writing is so gorgeous and evocative, and it makes me want to scream in the best way. And it was also so fun and quirky, and I just I love September. This is not the first book, however, and I think it's the third. So I will have to put this one off, unfortunately, until I get the rest of the books. But I'm very much looking forward to when I do. I did manage to get one non-fiction book from Armchair Books, however. It was Extreme Latin, All the Latin You Need to Know for Surviving the 21st Century by Henry Beard. Yeah, I want to know Latin, but we're nowhere near there yet. What's really fun though is that the blurb is bilingual, which my language loving heart adores. It's also really funny. I also got 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne because, like, with Dracula Daily and Penny Dreadfuls and Moby Dick coming up, I'm really excited about this. I saw a post detailing like what happens in the book, and it's like, wow, you missed so many red flags about this being such a weird place. And it sounded so funny, and I don't know if it's intended to be funny or not, but I hope it is, at least in part. Kind of like Dracula, everyone was laughing at that in the first few chapters, and now we're all horrified. But it sounds like it's going to be a good time anyway. Oop. Sorry. And also, I got The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers, and you can tell that this is because the book is, out of copyright, because what is this cover? Yes, an 18th century Gothic. We're going to put on the cover someone in a hoodie in a plastic white mask. Really captures that Gothic feel. Yeah, I don't actually know much about The King in Yellow, so and I don't necessarily trust the synopsis here, so unfortunately we'll not be telling you much about it. So what I do know for certain about it is that it is a collection of stories by this author. Oh boy. It is a collection of stories by this author, horror, and I do think it also is a bit of, maybe edges up to weird fiction. But also don't quote me on that. And lastly, An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. Hilarious that we picked a River Solomon book for our book group and it wasn't this one. I have two books by this author. Neither of them are the right one for book group. I don't actually know what this one is about either, but the author's reputation precedes. Okay, so the blurb reads, Astra has little to offer folks in the way of rebuttal when they call her ogre and freak. She's used to the names, she only wishes there was more truth to them. If she were truly a monster, she'd be powerful enough to tear down the walls around her until nothing remains of her world. Astra lives in the low-deck slums of the HSS Matilda, a space vessel organised much like the antebellum South. For generations, Matilda has ferried the last of humanity to a mythical promised land. On its way, the ship's leaders have imposed harsh moral restrictions and deep indignities on dark-skinned sharecroppers like Astar. Embroiled in a grudge with a brutal overseer, Astar learns there may be a way to improve her lot if she's willing to sow the seeds of civil war. And then we finish up with Atkinson Price books, which I love. It's not a shop that I get to visit often. It is bigger. Yes, it is. It's bigger. It's near New Lanark. But I love going in because it's always got a very eclectic selection For instance, the first book that I picked up by Janet Ray is Warm Covers, a Scottish Textile Story, which is just delightful. I think this starts in the 18th and 19th centuries. It talks about like industry, how quilts have been used to like declare political and religious beliefs, what you can tell by like it talks about things like the impact of dye, the advancements in like needlework, and touches on suffragettes. Also, and specifically, it draws on stories from like both female and male quilters, because while it has been a gendered thing, like let's not leave out people. I also picked up Braised Pork by Anne Yu, and this deals with the aftermath of suicide. Jaja's husband, and I think she was feeling kind of constrained in her marriage, but this is still out of nowhere, and the only note he's left her is really weird and she can't make sense of it. And so I believe it's her journey in the wake of this, which is really interesting because it could be like very literary, and it could also be very kind of, don't quite want to use the term magical realism, but of that kind of nature. So I'm excited to see how this turns out. I got The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake because this has been everywhere, and honestly it does sound kind of amazing. So it's kind of like Six Extraordinary oh boy. Six Extraordinary Magicians, 5 Chances to Win, One Secret Society. Which sounds so interesting. I've managed to stay quite spoiler free for this somehow, and I'm glad because I think it sounds like something that you just want to experience. You know I love languages, I've spoken about it a few times in this video, so of course I had to pick up Beowulf, a new translation by Maria Ivana Headley. So yeah, it's a very modern, very kind of linguistically loose, I think, translation, kind of to the point that I think it edges up the adaptation. Wait, for instance, being translated as bro. I'm so excited to see how this changes the text. I do also have a copy of Beowulf, a more standard translation, and I'm going to be reading the two of them together. And lastly we have The Coffin Roads, Journeys to the West by Ian Bradley, which is another non-fiction. I didn't realise Coffin Roads were a thing, but it does make sense. And also this deals with like Highlands history, and I've just come from the Highlands, so of course, so it draws on first-hand accounts of funeral practices and customs, following along like these ancient tracks because graveyards were remote. And I think it just sounds fascinating. And here, because there are some photos, are two Coffin Roads. This one and this one. And that is my holiday haul. It is a little bit all over the place. Let me know what you think. Are you interested in any of these books? Do you have anything similar? Yeah, thank you for watching.